Hello, folks. I'm back with a upgrade review of my Beretta FS92 M9A1 pistol that I recently acquired. And as you see, there are quite a few upgrades on this. But I want to say something first. On the previous video, I had stated that the trigger on here is a metal trigger, but with polymer coating. I've received some messages from other viewers and so forth that said it was metal, and then I went to investigate further, and other people said it was metal. Other people agreed with me and said it was. On one hand, they agreed that it was metal with a polymer coating. On the other hand, they said it was polymer, and there was this kind of like big situation regarding what it was made out of. Even when I contacted a gun reviewer, he told me it was polymer, but I contacted Beretta two times regarding this trigger, and both times Beretta has told me that this is a metal trigger with polymer coating. And a couple other people that contacted me, they basically said that I was right the first time and that Beretta was right. So on this particular model, which is the Beretta 92 FS M9A1, they are stating that on this particular pistol that this is metal with a polymer coating, and that's where I'm going to leave it at this point because it started up a firestorm. Since we're talking about the trigger at this point, I decided because of the information I received not to replace the trigger or do anything of that nature. And the thing about that is I'm not good with double action triggers. I can do 1911 triggers. I can do Glock triggers, just putting in and replacing parts or whatnot. But I know my limitations and I don't mess around with double action, single action triggers because there's so many spring components. It's just not my forte. The other thing that I did not do also was on the safety here. Now, there are versions of this safety that are called the G model. The G model is a decocker only, and that's what a lot of people have complained about, that when you put this in safe, or when you rack the slide and you put it in safe, you might forget to put this safety back in fire mode, and you'll get something like a dead trigger. I didn't do that for the same reasons. There are a lot of intricate components in here. I was considering getting a gunsmith that handled this, but I decided against it because for me, it's just a matter of training. So I'm just going to show that the firearm is clear. You can see down through here at the bottom that it is clear for safety purposes. And I'm going to show you what I did add to this firearm. What you can't see here is a hammer spring, and I'm going to show you. This is the Wilson Combat hammer spring. This is the original hammer spring. I just put everything back into the Wilson Combat or whatever product I got. I put it back in there because I use these as a backup in case I might have to use this in case of any parts failures or whatnot. So this is the original Beretta hammer spring, and the hammer spring is, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, was something around 18 pounds, and the one that's in here now is about 16 pounds. When you go on the Beretta site, what you want to do is, when you're replacing the hammer spring, you want to go look, and they will tell you on there that there are three of them. There's going to be two of them are for competition, and the one that I have in here is for competition and defensive purposes. I chose that because this is going to be primarily a defensive firearm. And this hammer spring makes a world of difference in here. It really does, because that first double action pull was really it was smooth, but it wasn't to my liking. It wasn't as smooth as, let's say, a CZ double action pull. Also, what I included with this is, if you notice that the lanyard loop is gone, and this is the original lanyard loop that's in there, and the lanyard loop usually goes onto the hammer spring and the hammer spring rod that holds the spring in place. So I basically replaced this with the Wilson Combat it's a Magwell hammer spring holder, if you will. So that's what I did there. They call it a mag guide. You know, the Wilson, and as you see, that's the model number for it, and it's for Beretta 92s and 96s. They call that a mag guide. So when you do take a magazine, it helps you as you load this up that it will feed into the magwell very properly, and so there won't be any issues as far as putting a smooth transition inside the magwell. And as you know, that the Beretta M9A1, they kind of like make their magwells a little bigger, but this is kind of like a magwell guide, so it works perfectly. And all you do is you just take that part out, you put this one in, and you have to use a little pressure, but you just put that in, and you use your pin that goes across and it connects it. Anybody that's worked on, let's say, a CZ P09, when they change the grips, it's the same principle. And that is a Beretta part as well. Excuse me, that is a Wilson Combat part as well, I meant to say. Speaking of Beretta, I decided to get the Beretta Oversized mag release, and Wilson Combat does make a larger size mag release, but their mag release is kind of they have different ones. I like the serrated one. They do have a serrated version of this, and they all say some of them will have the Wilson Combat logo or whatever the case may be. I didn't care one bit. So all I did was I just got this one, and it works perfectly fine because I can do this with one hand with no problems and just hit that mag release without losing my grip so much. The thing about the Beretta one is, I don't know if the camera's going to pick up on it. There's a little spring right here. If you buy the Wilson Combat version, it's not going to have the spring connection for your mag release. It's not going to come with that. It's the instruction it's going to tell you to take the one from the original, which this is, and put that into the Wilson Combat mag release. I'm glad that Beretta has done it that way, so you won't have to buy another. So you won't have to fiddle with taking this out and putting it into the new mag release. And it also serves as an extra part or extra backup. That's what I like to do. The thing about also is, if you look at this is the button that you would normally depress. If you look at the size difference, I could hit it very well, but this oversized mag release is really a good thing to have. And they're both very well. This is made out of plastic, and this is made out of steel. So that's a very good piece to have, especially if you need to reach it with your thumb, because a lot of people have different thumb sizes or can't reach. So that will aid in that. The other part that I've skipped over, this is another Beretta part. This particular Beretta part is called it's a skeletonized hammer from Beretta. It fits the Beretta 92s and 96s. I believe Wilson Combat has another name for it, or I forget the other name at this time, but this is probably the easiest part to put inside your Beretta. It's a skeletonized hammer, and here's the original that was already in there prior. This is the original one. It's supposed to be lighter in weight because you're missing a lot of this metal portion right here, and it's supposed to be lighter in weight. So I saw somebody on another video, and what they did was they weighed it, and this was lighter, but I would say it was lighter not by much, but it does serve a purpose of, fast to hit the primer and so forth. So it is a, a lighter hammer, and aesthetically it looks really good. Makes the gun kind of pop real well, kind of like how the 1911s are. And that's another reason why I like Berettas, is because even though it's an old school gun, regardless of the controversy, you can really dress these up in the same way with a 1911. So, and the last other piece I want to show, well, not the last, but one of the other pieces I want to show to you is the Beretta originally comes with a polymer guide rod, and it has its version of fluting right here. It has its version of it, and they work very well, but just to add a little extra weight and for a little more aesthetics, this is a fluted steel guide rod from Wilson Combat. And I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can see how the fluting is right there. It's supposed to enable, if there's any debris or anything, that it will fall through those grooves and fall out the firearm, I guess, when it's cycling. So you can see that right here, how it's made right there. The extra weight I don't mind. That'll help with the recoil and so forth. That's why a lot of people will put steel guide rods in their Glocks and so forth. So I really I really like these additions that are on here to add a little weight. And also, since this has the Picatinny rail, it also adds, it's a little heavier, so especially if you want to add a flashlight, so it keeps you on target during rapid fire. And last but not least are the grips. These are the Wilson Combat grips. They're actually made by VZ, and these are the G10 grips. I decided to get this color because a lot of people, what they do is they usually get the black cherry version, or they get the olive green. I wanted something different that would stick out different from everybody else, so I decided to get this particular color. It's the black and gray VZ grips, and these grips are really good. I'm really surprised. A lot of times I think a lot of the products out there are gimmicks, and they're really good for controlling the firearm and holding the firearm. A lot of times people think that when you add parts to firearms that they are gimmicky and so forth, but I would say the best parts, the best improvement, if you don't add anything on this firearm, if you have a Beretta 92, I would suggest highly to get the the hammer spring. It's well worth it, and I did feel a big difference at the range with that, especially with that double action pull. The double action pull is it's smooth, but like I said before, it is not. It's hard. It's got that stacking, but it is smooth. When you add this hammer spring in there, some people on other videos, and unfortunately I don't have a gauge, have had roughly about 12-pound pulls. This puts you anywhere between 8 and 9, from some videos I've seen, between 8 and 9 pounds. I would say this would be between 9 and 10 from what I felt from the double action pull. But when it comes to single action pull, it's unbelievable. I would say it's anywhere between 3.5 and maybe 4.5, and it helps with your follow-up shots when you're firing. I did shooting with the other with the other prior stock version of this with the stock components. I'm trying to say, and my targets were okay, but this was after the components. Now this is as you, I put this roughly at 12 yards. Now this is a little bit ragged. I'm just still testing some things out here, but at 12 yards, again, this made a very good improvement, especially when it comes to the headshots. Now, before adding that component, I was shooting a little bit left or on high. Yes, you can blame that on the shooter because number one, you have to train your finger on your first double action shot. But I really think that at 10 yards, firing this with the upgrades, mind you, it's not the major upgrades. I think that at 12 yards, this is pretty good. And it felt differently. If you look at my previous photo, you'll see these groups look a lot better, whereas the other ones were a little bit ragged, and it's probably me getting used to the firearm. But I think this is pretty good for 12 yards, and the feel of the pistol is really good. So, in conclusion, I would just like to say if you really want to get a Beretta, I would recommend you getting at least one in your collection. I understand the controversy, but when you customize it out, some people even change trigger components, but it's really a good buy to have a Beretta just in your collection, just to have one, and just trick it out the way you want. I'm really happy with this firearm. A lot of people have said, why did you get a Beretta when you have CZs? But yeah, I like it. I like it. It's for me, it's like a collector's item for knowing that our troops had this for roughly about 30 years. So I've always wanted one. So I really like it. So I hope you find this helpful for you to customize your Beretta 92, or if you're considering to get one. And that's all I have. So happy shooting, and thanks for viewing.